So Sony recently said the PS5 is in its latter half of its life cycle. So what that means is that we are heading into the second half of its generation, which is honestly kind of hard to believe, but I feel like it's the perfect time to look back at the best games that you can play right now on your PS5. I mean, for the first half of the generation, they've already gotten some big must-play exclusives, and of course, they also have unwavering third-party support as well. So what we're going to do is that we're going to take a look at 25 different games today. Now, I decided not to include simple remasters like Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, and Death Stranding for list purposes, but do keep in mind, those are amazing games as well. If you haven't already played them on the PlayStation 4, you need to absolutely do yourself a favor here. They are that good. Now, do keep in mind, though, that this is only my opinion, and I'd love to hear yours as well. Tell me your favorite games in the comments below, but without any further ado, let's just go and jump right into it. Number 25, Hogwarts Legacy. Yeah, we're going to start the list off with one of the most popular and most successful games of this generation. The dream Harry Potter game officially is a reality where you can explore Hogwarts in an open world setting. That means not only can you explore its school where you can form relationships with its many students and go to class, but you can also go outside the school and explore its wider world as well. You can see some of the beloved creatures in its universe, the popular Hogsmeade, and you can even ride around on your broomstick. This is all while uncovering a deep-rooted secret about a hidden and powerful magic that the world knows little about. If anything else, this game is a real treat for anybody who enjoys the Harry Potter universe. Number 24, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Now, Ratchet & Clank has always been a fun series, I think we can safely say that, and well, Rift Apart without a doubt continues that trend onward, but this time with a new time shift mechanic and some new characters. Rift Apart combines action platforming with insanely creative weapons, and it also has rather stunning visuals. I mean, this is close to Pixar. This might very well be one of the best looking animated games around, but again, its gameplay is just so much more than that. At the end of the day, it's a game that understands why we play games in the first place. They give you all of these tools and weapons to just maximize that fun factor. They basically say, hey, take this weapon and wreak as much havoc as you possibly can. Number 23, Helldivers 2. This has been a real surprise hit for PlayStation, but Helldivers 2 truly has taken the gaming world by storm with its fun gameplay that emphasizes teamwork. This is an online cooperative shooter where you fight off waves of relentless enemies. I mean, they are relentless. And this is all while working together to complete a series of goals until you can escape. And while that's a brief summary, that really only scratches the surface of what this game has to offer. The way they emphasize teamwork in Helldivers 2 is quite unique, and this can be a very challenging game. You will need to communicate and work well together with your team if you want to have any hopes of surviving. This game is extremely fun, so grab a friend and dive right in. Number 22, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. So it's been a while since we've gotten a brand new Prince of Persia game, but Ubisoft finally brought the series back, and dare I say, it's actually one of their best games that they've made in years. This is really just one of the better Metroidvania games as you can play, period. There's a lot of cool abilities to unlock, its combat feels excellent, the platforming is a lot of fun, and it actually even has a good story. It really is the whole package, which, does kind of make sense in retrospect. This is coming from the same team that brought us Rayman Origins and Legends, and once again, they've really proven their prowess for 2D platformers, or in this case, 2D Metroidvanias. Absolutely don't sleep on this game, though. It really is that good. Number 21, Armored Core 6. From Software's latest game, Armored Core 6 has once again cemented their legacy as one of the best studios around. Unlike the Soulsborne games, though, in Armored Core you play as these ultra-powerful mechs, and they feel absolutely fantastic. It's not just its challenging gameplay, though, it also shines in its customization. You can customize almost every single detail about these mechs, and because each level plays completely different, it really encourages you to experiment rather than just relying on one singular build. So when you combine that with From Software's top-tier level design, challenge, and combat, it really does make for a fantastic mech game, and just one of the most unique games that you can play this generation. Number 20, Crash Bandicoot 4. It's honestly kind of crazy to think about the journey of Crash Bandicoot and its fans, but this once beloved franchise that originated on the PlayStation 1 is back with a brand new sequel that follows up the Insane trilogy. And let me tell you, it lives up to the far too long of a wait that fans have had to endure. Crash Bandicoot 4 takes the franchise back to its roots once again, but also with some new twists this time around. There's a wide variety of characters to play as, and there's also some unique abilities that keeps the game fresh. There's actually a ton of content in Crash 4, and of course, in typical Crash fashion, it's a lot more challenging than what you might expect. So I mean, to me, this is just one of the most brilliant 3D platformers that you can play. It's challenging, it's unique, and it's a ton of fun to play. Number 19, Gran Turismo 7. Now, when you think about premier racing games, there's always a short list of the best, and Gran Turismo is always among that conversation for a very good reason. This is one of the kings of racing games, especially when it comes to that simulation experience. There's not many games that can do it as good as Gran Turismo. Even better is that GT7 did take the series back to its roots a little bit more. That was a big complaint with GT Sport on the PS4, but there is more of an emphasis on its single player this time around, where you can play career races and earn licenses. Now, it also has that multiplayer experience as well if you want, so you really kind of get the best of both worlds in GT7, and if you like racing games, this really is a must-play on the PS5. Number 18, Lies of P. Now, we've gotten a lot of Souls-like games over the years, but Lies of P very well might be one of the best attempts that we've seen from a company that's not From Software. For all of those PlayStation fans begging for a Bloodborne 60 FPS patch, which, by the way, I'm with you all on that one, but Lies of P is truly a great game that was heavily inspired by the likes of Bloodborne. You can really see that in some of its animations and how the world was designed, and also in just the combat itself. Even still, though, this is not just some carbon copy. It does have some fresh new ideas as well. It's familiar, but it's also different. And actually, speaking of different, its story is a rather interesting take on Pinocchio. So seriously, as long as you're up for a challenge, Lies of P is secretly actually one of the better games that's released in the last few years. Number 17, Dead Space. One of the greatest horror games ever is officially back with a brand new remake. Now, some people do refer to it as Resident Evil in space, and you can definitely see some similarities between the two, but don't let that description fool you. Dead Space is still very much its own unique experience. It takes place on a space station, which is perfect for its claustrophobic environment, and that's something that really stands out about Dead Space. The tension is incredible because of its close-quarter creepy setting. Where it really separates itself, though, is that unlike other zombie games, you don't specifically target their heads, but rather you'll need to shoot off their limbs. There's a real strategy to Dead Space, as you also have to manage your limited resources. I will leave with this, though. Please, EA, come on, continue the Dead Space franchise. Number 16, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. Now, the Yakuza series is one of the longest and most brilliant story franchises ever made, hands down. And that's why I always have to kind of recommend it with a caveat. See, Infinite Wealth is the 9th mainline entry, 10 if you include Like a Dragon Gaiden as well, and they do all have connected stories. So for that reason, new players might be threatened, but please don't. Yes, I do recommend starting off with Yakuza 0 first, but I'm telling you, this series is more than worth it. It's got such a thrilling storyline with tons of twists and turns, and it's one of the most atmospheric franchises ever made, mostly being set in Japan. For Yakuza veterans, though, I am very happy to say that Infinite Wealth is arguably among the best in the series. It's pretty much everything that you would expect from the series, but with a new location, there's new minigames, and they really took that next step at perfecting its new turn-based combat. I mean, seriously, do not miss out on this game because it is one of the best games this generation. Just gotta get caught up with the story, is all I'm gonna say. Number 15, Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8. Okay, so yes, I combined two games for this entry because truthfully, that really allows me to talk about even more games. And with both being fighting games, I feel like this game will appeal to a similar audience. Now, I will say that they do play quite a bit different though. Street Fighter 6 is a traditional 2D fighter that really focuses on its fundamentals. It does have some new features like its drive system, which gives players access to 5 powerful abilities that requires the drive gauge. This adds an entirely extra strategy to its already excellent combat. And I love the art style in this game. Ultimately, I feel like Capcom just kind of knocked it out of the park with this one, but I can also really say the same thing for Bandai Namco and Tekken 8. I mean, my goodness, this very well might be one of the best looking games this generation, and so too is its combat. The big difference between these games, though, is that Tekken 8 is a 3D fighting game, whereas Street Fighter is 2D. Now, I'd recommend both, but depending on your preference, that's really the key difference. Number 14, It Takes Two. Now here I have a legitimate masterpiece. It Takes Two is a wild ride that constantly throws new and refreshing ideas at the player. It might be a 3D platformer on the surface, but there's just so much more to this game. This is a mandatory cooperative game that always focuses on making you work together, and truthfully, I think it's one of the best, if not the very best cooperative game ever made. It really is that good, and you and your partner will always have to work together to solve its various problems to get through each individual stage. Now, I don't want to spoil any of its levels for you, but that's where this game truly shines. It's just so creative, and it just surprises you in the most pleasant ways each and every time. It even has an interesting story that can both be funny as well as deep. Number 13, Spider-Man 2. Now, Spider-Man 2 is one of the PS5's flagship exclusives, and from a gameplay standpoint, it took the original 2017 formula that everybody loves so much, and they managed to improve it even further. Its combat is just so fun, clean, and smooth. And in typical Insomniac fashion, you have various gadgets and abilities, which makes you feel like a true superhero. I don't know if there's a superhero game that feels better than Spider-Man 2. It also has one of the best traversal systems in all of gaming as you swing or now glide across the city. It's really one of the only open world games available that I never really felt the need to fast travel because it's just so fun and fast to explore yourself. Now, the story, though, I don't really think it's quite on par with Spider-Man 2018. I really enjoyed the overarching story between Peter Parker and his best friend Harry, but some of the character decisions and writing can be a little questionable at times. But again, for the overarching story, I still thought it was very well done, and of course, the gameplay is just absolutely excellent. Number 12, Persona 3 Reload. Persona's popularity exploded last generation on the PS4, and now fans can truly bask in the glory of the older titles as well, including the latest remake, Persona 3 Reload. Similar to Persona 5, it has a stylish art style, and it combines its turn-based combat, monster taming, and social sim elements into one complete masterpiece. That is what this game is. It's a masterpiece for the genre that has inspired so many games after it. If you've never played one of these games, though, you do play as a high school student, and basically you and a group of other students discover a parallel world that impacts the human world. So you kind of balance your everyday life, you go to school, you build relationships, and then you also travel to this parallel demon world where you fight off monsters and uncover its many secrets. It's got an amazing story, and if you like Persona 5, you're going to absolutely love this game. And if you like this genre, but never played these games, it is a must-play, hands down. Number 11, Cyberpunk 2077. Cyberpunk very well might go down as one of the biggest turnarounds in gaming history. It went from a complete buggy mess at launch to now being one of the best open world games on the market, including its new expansion, Phantom Liberty. Now you can jump back into its world of Night City that not only is fixed, but its new expansion, Phantom Liberty, adds a ton of new content, including an additional story, a new location, some new gameplay ideas, plus plenty more. So if you've already played and finished Cyberpunk, this is a great reason to return. And if you're somebody who's been holding off because of its launch problems, well, now is the time to dive back in. Number 10, Horizon Forbidden West. Horizon, in my opinion, really does have one of the best settings in all of gaming. The combination of futuristic dinosaur-like robots with this prehistoric lifestyle, it's just really unique and stands out. It's also one of the most stunning games graphically, and quite frankly, it's amazing that this game is open world, because when you look at its visuals, it's just kind of like, wow, how did they manage to make an open world game feel and look this good? The world is massive, and its gameplay is also a lot of fun. I think that it's actually much improved over the original because of its combat specifically, and I also really enjoyed the story the further you got into it. Now, with that, I will say this much: it does take a while to get into its story just because Aloy is, I want to say, a little hard-headed early on, but once it starts to get going, it never really lets up from then on out. Number 9, Alan Wake 2. Now, the original Alan Wake was already a pretty unique and weird experience, But that's kind of the thing about the sequel, because they dialed all that up to 11, if not even more. This game is absolutely bonkers in the best way possible. It's honestly probably one of the most creative horror games that I've ever played personally, and that is something to note here. Unlike the first game, this is a legitimate horror experience that takes inspiration from the Resident Evil series. It's just a lot more bizarre, and it does some things that I've not really seen in any other game before, and to me, that's why this game stands out. It's just so different. Now, unlike the first game, though, you do play as two different characters. Of course, you play as Alan Wake, who impacts the story with his writing, but you also play as an FBI agent that finds yourself investigating a cult murder in a small-time town. So you swap between the two, and it weaves together in a confusing, albeit still captivating story that always keeps you guessing. Number 8, Astro's Playroom. Yeah, this one might surprise some people, but in my opinion, Astro's Playroom is secretly one of the best PlayStation 5 games to date. And even better is that every single PlayStation 5 owner already has this game. It does come pre-installed on every single PS5, and absolutely do not skip out on this game. This is an essential experience that showcases the PS5 controller's capabilities. There's still not a game that does it better. I'll even go so far as to say it's one of the best 3D platformers that I've ever played. And if you've been a big part of PlayStation's history, this game's going to mean that much more to you, because Astro's Playroom is jam-packed with nostalgia around every single corner. You're going to see a lot of iconic PlayStation characters, and you're going to collect a lot of different PlayStation products where you can see into their history. There's just so much love and attention poured into this game, and for all the reasons that I just mentioned, to me, this game is the best introduction for the PS5 and its hardware. Number 7, Baldur's Gate 3. This game and its sheer amount of quality shocked a lot of people when it first released. And I think especially over on console, because this is much more of a PC-centric RPG with that D&D format. But if you give this game a shot, you might really end up being surprised. It is now viewed as one of the greatest RPGs ever made, and it's probably going to be viewed that way for a long time into the future. Its turn-based combat is absolutely excellent. It's got an expansive world. It's got memorable characters, a captivating story. There's a ton, and I mean an absolute ton, of player choice. Its visuals look great, and hey, if you like the option to have relationships in games, well, they got plenty of that as well. So much so that some of it might genuinely surprise you. Baldur's Gate 3, though, in a lot of ways just feels like it has everything imaginable that you need for a great RPG experience. Again, this might be more of a niche title on consoles, but if you give it a try, you might really be surprised. Number 6, Final Fantasy 16. There's only a few games that I've ever played that resonates with me in such a profound way that when I finish it, I know that it's a game that I'm going to cherish and remember for years to come, or hey, maybe even decades to come. And that's what Final Fantasy 16 is to me. This is a game that I would gladly return to in the future because that's how much I enjoyed it. Yes, it's much more of an action-driven experience, which is polarizing for the Final Fantasy fan base. But for me personally, I still think this game is incredibly fun, and I just love its characters, its world, its story, and the direction that they took with its more mature approach. By the time that I reached the end credits, I was just blown away, and I genuinely couldn't stop thinking about it. Now, with all that said, though, it should be noted that Final Fantasy XVI's performance is not necessarily great. Visually, I mean, it's stunning, but this is basically a 30 FPS game, which I think is important to know. I mean, if there's ever a game that needs a PlayStation 5 Pro to fix its uncapped performance mode, this here would be the one. Number 5, Resident Evil 4. It's honestly impressive how Capcom has somehow managed to recreate the classic Resident Evil series and have managed to make them even better. The industry needs to pay attention because this is how you do the remake treatment. Resident Evil 4 comes in with not only state-of-the-art visuals, but its gameplay is also much improved with more modernized controls, which makes for a better and more fluid experience. They also attempted to fix one of Resident Evil 4's biggest complaints, and that's that it's not quite scary enough. In the remake, they actually made it a point to make it more intense. Now, I'm not going to say that it's some kind of super scary game or anything like that, because it's really not. But it does offer a more ominous atmosphere, if anything else. Honestly, I think this is just one of the best remakes that we've ever seen, and it's also just one of the best games of all time. So whether it's your first experience with Resident Evil 4 or if you're a returning veteran, in both situations, this is a must-play. I will also say that I would highly recommend playing through Resident Evil 2, 3, 7, and Village as well. They're all great experiences on the PlayStation 5. Number 4, Demon's Souls. In the year of 2024, we've kind of gotten used to hearing about Souls-like and Soulsborne games. And, well, it was Demon's Souls that got this genre kicked off in the first place. This game originally released back on the PlayStation 3 in 2007. Man, that makes me feel old. But looking back at it, it was a game that a lot of people unfortunately missed out on. With each passing year since then, though, it really seems like more and more people fall in love with FromSoft games. And the Demon's Souls remake is a top-tier game just like all the rest. What really stands out about Demon's Souls, though, is its level design. Unlike other From Software games, Demon's Souls has each world split up into a more linear fashion. Now, you can still freely visit each location in mostly any order that you want, but each world is just so perfectly designed. So when you combine that with its visuals, which is the best in the entire series thanks to Bluepoint, and when you combine that with its challenging combat and great gameplay, it just makes for one of the best experiences that you can have on the PlayStation 5. Number 3, God of War Ragnarok. Now, if the PlayStation has a face, that would have to be Kratos in God of War. This has been such an iconic franchise for them since the PS2 days, but what's kind of crazy about this series is in how they kind of recreated it. They somehow took one of the most angry characters in all of gaming, a god killer, the God of War, and they somehow turned him into a sympathetic character with a kid, the Dad of War. Very few popular franchises can successfully reboot quite the way God of War did. The original trilogy was already great, don't get me wrong, but for me personally, the reboot actually topped that and became one of PlayStation's best games ever made because it combines fresh new gameplay with one of the most memorable stories in all of gaming. And Ragnarok, for the most part, completes its Norse tale and adds even more gameplay elements with his son taking his next step forward. Number 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. One of the greatest games ever made is quickly becoming one of the best trilogies ever made. Final Fantasy VII Remake, Integrate, and Rebirth vastly expands on the original experience in both nostalgic and surprising ways. This is not a one-to-one remake. Instead, this is a reimagining, and you can even go so far as to say that it is a sequel in disguise. But they still somehow managed to keep the essence of what made the original so special in the first place. Its fully realized creative world, its memorable story, its cast of characters, and I think all of this is among the best ever made in really any kind of media that I've experienced. And they expanded on all of that in these remakes in a meaningful way. The original game was already one of my favorite games of all time, and to see it come to life in these remakes and to be even bigger has honestly been kind of a surreal moment for me. You can feel the love and care that went into making these games, and I just don't think many pieces of media compares to Final Fantasy VII. It really is just that special, and once again, we get to see that in Rebirth with its open world. A lot of people have always talked about how the modern Final Fantasy experience doesn't feel as good as the classics, but I think 7 Remake and Rebirth kind of changes that. These games sit among the best of the best of that Final Fantasy experience. However, as a bit of a note, in order to play Rebirth, you're definitely going to want to play Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate, and I do also recommend playing Crisis Core Reunion as well, because it is important to the story. Once you play all 3 of these games, though, you'll understand why the Final Fantasy VII experience is one of the most beloved games ever made, and also why it'll probably remain one of the most beloved games for decades to come. Number 1, Elden Ring. Yep, at the number 1 spot, it has to go to one of my favorite games ever made, being Elden Ring. This game is just so masterful at what it does. It kind of reminds me of older games in a lot of ways, but thrown into a more modern package with more advanced gameplay. And what I mean by that is that they don't hold your hands whatsoever. They reward you for going off the beaten path with a ton of secrets to uncover. There's optional bosses to discover. There's powerful hidden weapons. There's all of these extra layers to its story if you want to piece the world together by searching it out. And what really makes this game special is that it makes the player's choice a priority. They not only encourage you to explore, but they also encourage you to experiment with how you want to fight. There are a ton of player builds that will completely change how you play thanks to its endless amount of weapons and abilities. And that's going to be very important considering just how challenging this game can be. So Elden Ring, to me, is not just a masterpiece, but I'm going to go so far as to say that this is legitimately one of the best games that I've ever played, and that's why it sits at my #1 spot. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this list. I hope you enjoyed it, but I do want to hear your thoughts as well. Let me hear about some of your favorite games in the comments below. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, and peace out.